It all started with one sentence that ripped through diplomacy like a thunderclap. 48 hours! That was the ultimatum. 48 hours for President Ibrahim Traoré to apologize or face consequences that could shake more than just politics. But what happens when a man refuses to kneel? When truth becomes more dangerous than war? This is that story. And if you think this is just about politics, think again. This is about power, pride, and a truth that refused to die. Welcome to Traore versus America, where truth never bows. In the heart of Kingston, Jamaica's parliament was in chaos. The air was thick, not with debate, but with anger. Lawmakers slammed their fists on wooden desks, voices rising above the noise like thunder in a storm. Prime Minister Andrew Holness stood before the cameras, face tight, voice sharp. This government will not allow any foreign leader to insult the dignity of Jamaica. President Ibrahim Traoré must apologize within 48 hours, or face consequences. It sounded like strength. But behind those polished words there was panic. Because deep down everyone knew this wasn't really about an insult. It was about the truth he spoke, and the fear of what might happen if people actually listened. Just days earlier, in a crowded Kingston auditorium, the stage had been set for a standard diplomatic event. Cameras flashed. Politicians smiled. The script was supposed to be predictable. Handshakes, polite applause, nothing controversial. But when Ibrahim Traoré took the stage, the air changed. He didn't come to flatter. He came to confront. His tone was calm, but his words hit like hammers. Corruption, he said, is not a policy. It's a betrayal. He spoke of how nations rot from the inside when leaders trade loyalty for luxury, of how the poorest carry the weight of decisions made by the richest, of how power, once meant to serve the people, becomes a tool to silence them. The room went silent. Some ministers froze. Others shifted in their seats. And then, one by one, the powerful began to walk out. But Traoré didn't flinch. He didn't soften his tone. He didn't apologize. He spoke as if the world needed to hear what Jamaica had tried to forget. He talked about stolen funds hidden overseas while hospitals collapsed. He talked about young people losing hope because greed had stolen their future. He talked about courage, the kind that stands alone when silence is convenient. By the time he finished, the silence wasn't polite anymore. It was fear. Within hours, Jamaica's government called the speech an insult. Officials went on TV, wagging fingers and demanding respect. But the people? They were replaying Traoré's words on phones, on buses, on street corners. For years they had whispered about corruption. Now someone had shouted it, out loud for the world to hear. That's when the ultimatum came. 48 hours to take it back. 48 hours to make the truth disappear. But outside the polished halls of government, something far more powerful was rising. In the markets, people argued about it over coffee and curry. On campuses, students passed around clips of his speech like a secret weapon. At night, songs were written about the African who spoke the truth. The countdown had begun, but not the one Holness imagined. This wasn't a countdown to an apology. It was a countdown to awakening. By the next morning, Jamaica was alive, not with violence, but with something more dangerous. Awareness. Thousands of young people gathered across Kingston. They held signs that said, "Truth is not disrespect." Apology? No. Accountability? Yes. They weren't fighting for Traore. They were fighting for themselves, for a country that had been silent too long. Holness went on television again, his tone tighter, his words harsher. "No foreign leader," he declared, "has the right to insult our sovereignty." But that speech landed flat. Because out there, in the sun and sweat of real Jamaica, people weren't chanting against Traore. They were chanting against lies. They were saying, "We are not blind anymore." Within hours, the story went global. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, everyone was covering the clash. Analysts called it a diplomatic firestorm. Commentators compared it to moments in history when truth challenged empire. And across Africa, something powerful began to stir. In Ouagadougou, in Dakar, in Bamako, people cheered. They said he spoke for all of us. Social media flooded with one line: "Truth does not bow." Traore had become more than a president. He had become a symbol, the man who refused to apologize for honesty. Meanwhile, inside Jamaica's government, panic spread like wildfire. Leaked memos revealed frantic meetings. Officials feared that public anger was rising faster than they could control it. "This was supposed to silence him," one aide reportedly said. "Instead, it's making him unstoppable." As the final hours of the ultimatum approached, tension blanketed Kingston. Police were stationed at intersections. The press waited for statements. The people waited for truth. Holness appeared again on national television, jaw tight. "President Ibrahim Traoré has until midnight to retract his comments. If not, we will act." His tone was steel. But behind his eyes, there was pressure, even fear. Because everyone knew Traoré wasn't going to bend, and he didn't. Across the ocean, in Ouagadougou, he stood before a single microphone. No fanfare, no drama, just conviction. "The truth," he said softly, "does not bow to deadlines." He paused. The world listened. "I did not insult the Jamaican people. I spoke for them. I spoke of corruption, not to shame a nation, but to protect its dignity. If telling the truth has become a crime, then the world is in trouble." Then came the line that would echo across continents. "I will not apologize for standing with the people." And just like that, the 48-hour ultimatum died. By morning, every newspaper screamed headlines: "Traoré defies Jamaica. Government considers retaliation. Diplomatic crisis erupts." But something unexpected happened. The more the government attacked him, the more ordinary people defended him. From Kingston to Montego Bay, the protests grew. Teachers, taxi, drivers, vendors, students. They weren't shouting for Burkina Faso, they were shouting for Jamaica. Apology won't build. Hospitals. Truth needs no permission. Those were their chance. An elderly woman told a reporter, "I don't know this man from Africa, but I know when someone tells the truth. They've lied to us for years, and now they're angry because he said it out loud." That quote went viral. And suddenly the story wasn't about Traoré anymore. It was about the soul of a nation. Inside Parliament, the mood turned frantic. Leaked recordings captured furious debates. "This isn't working," one minister shouted. "Every time we hit back, he looks stronger." Another voice snapped back. "So what? We just let him embarrass us?" But by then, the damage was done. Traore didn't need to speak again. The people were speaking for him. Independent journalists began digging into old corruption cases. Government contracts, missing funds, fake development projects. The truth Traore had spoken was now being investigated on live TV. Even the ruling party's media machine couldn't spin fast enough. Their message, that he had disrespected Jamaica, was falling apart. Because everyone could see what was really happening. This wasn't about foreign disrespect. It was about local accountability. Across universities and churches, the conversation shifted. Pastors preached about integrity. Professors led debates about leadership and honesty. Artists painted murals of Traore's face beside the words, "Truth has no apology." A moment that began as a diplomatic clash had become something far deeper, a mirror held up to the entire world. People began asking, if he can say that abroad, why can't our leaders say it here? And that question spread, not just in Jamaica, not just in Africa, but across nations tired of being told to stay silent. In America, commentators drew comparisons to moments in U.S. history when truth-tellers like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and whistleblowers stood alone against systems bigger than themselves. The message was the same: silence protects power. But truth, even when it hurts, liberates people. Days turned into weeks. The government tried to move on, but the people didn't. Everywhere, the conversation kept returning to that speech, that single spark that lit a movement, and in those conversations, something powerful took root. Hope. Civil society groups grew louder, journalists bolder, youth more organized. Jamaica was waking up, not because of politics, but because someone dared to tell them what they already knew. Inside Parliament, reforms were suddenly under discussion. Anti-corruption audits, public budget reviews, not out of goodwill, but out of fear. Because when the people awaken, politicians remember who they're supposed to serve. Today, that 48-hour ultimatum is long expired. But its echoes still shake the pillars of power. Ibrahim Traoré didn't apologize. He didn't retreat. And by standing firm, he gave Jamaica and the world a gift, a reminder that truth, once spoken, cannot be silenced. Governments may issue statements. They may summon ambassadors, hold press conferences, and pretend to control the narrative. But the truth has already escaped their walls. It's in the streets, in the classrooms, in the hearts of ordinary people who now know their voices matter. And that's the part no politician can ever take back. Because the moment a nation stops whispering and starts speaking, the game changes. In the end, this was never about two leaders. It was about us, the people, and the choice we all face. Do we stay quiet to keep peace, or do we speak truth, even when it shakes the world? Ibrahim Traoré made his choice. He stood up. He refused to apologize. And in doing so, he turned a diplomatic scandal into a global awakening. So now I'll ask you, if you were in his place, would you do the same? Would you risk power, comfort, and reputation for the truth? Drop your thoughts below. Because silence builds empires, but conversation builds revolutions. This is Traore versus America, where truth never bows.